Hey everybody, this is Heidi Bennett of Vibrant Visionaries podcast and Spinal Tap Minute podcast. And this is a quick little promo for an upcoming event, and it's Movies by Minutes Portland. We're going to be meeting up in Portland, Oregon on Saturday, August 24th. For live podcasting, games, and on the stage, we've got the Movies by Minutes guys from Star Wars Minute. Actually, it's going to be a mashup of Star Wars Minute and the Godfather Minute. The newly pod game, Rick from Mad Max Minute, is going to be hosting that. Vibrant Visionaries, where I'm going to have the fellas from Open the Podcast Doors, Hal, which I think you could probably figure out which podcast that is. And then just added the Cast and the Furious. So lots of live podcasting and some games going on. Tickets are $20. It's a family-friendly event. It's really a social event. It's not just for the Movies by Minutes listener, but the podcast listener and fan alike. Go to moviesbyminutes.com/Portland. That's moviesbyminutes.com/Portland to buy tickets. Again, tickets are $20. See you in Portland.
Oh, that's why my name is Jungle Skunk in the...
I saw that. It totally looks like a skunk, but
Yeah.
from what I saw, and I looked up some images and videos to corroborate, the Mexican tree porcupine or Mexican hairy dwarf porcupine.
Oh, hairy dwarf. That was my nickname in college.
You grew out of that nickname, though. Yeah.
Come on in, you fuckers. Come on in.
Ol Painless is waiting.
Come on in, you fuckers. Come on in. Ol Painless is waiting.
Welcome to Predator Minute, the podcast that breaks down the 1987 action sci-fi classic Predator 1 minute at a time. I'm John Zabriskie.
And I am Jeff Glover. John, I hear you're locked in a basement for this episode.
Yes. I'm in a very special, super secret recording location for minute 47. I'm in the basement of my parents-in-law. We are up in the beautiful San Juan Islands in Washington State visiting for the weekend, and it is gorgeous outside. I can see the pink sunset, and just doing some recording of Predator Minute in a really cool feeling basement. Just a lot of good.
Can you see it from the basement, or are you just having to imagine it in your mind?
I'm told there's a sunset, and I think I'm facing the right way.
Someone's going to bring you water and white bread later.
Please turn on the lights.
Shove it under the door.
Right. No, there's some windows because the house is built on a hill facing the water. Yeah, I'm in the part, whenever you have that part of the house built against the earth, like the downstairs is naturally cool all year, and I love that feature. Yeah. But our house doesn't have that because we're built just on flat land. But anytime we visit here, it's nice to come here when it's hotter out and into the basement where it's nice and cool, and you can see a view of the Salish Sea.
Yeah, and sometimes when you're on vacation, it's nice to go lock yourself in the basement. away from the rest of the family.
With my friend Jack Daniels.
Jack Daniels. Well, excellent. I'm glad you were able to figure this out remotely so we could not let our fans down and get minute 47 out in a reasonable amount of time.
Yeah, and maybe we'll do some recording of minutes a little bit more ahead of time now that vacation time for me is taking a couple week break.
Yeah, we should do some daytime minutes.
Yeah, we can definitely do some daytime recordings. But today we're talking minute 47. You could call that the Tom Glavine of minutes. Tom Glavine was a Hall of Fame. He is a Hall of Fame baseball player. He was a pitcher for mainly my Atlanta Braves. He was the MVP of the 95 World Series. Step into it! The one championship I have seen of my all-time favorite team, the Braves. So that was really exciting. Fun story about that is that I remember recording the game live just in case they won it that night. I had a couple recordings on because I think they had a chance to close out in Game 5, and they didn't win that one in Cleveland. Went back to Atlanta, and I re-recorded over that Game 5 footage for Game 6. Fortunately, they won, and I didn't blow the whole series.
Oh, that's awesome. What year was that?
That was 95. That was, our first or my second year living in Washington State, moving from Tennessee. Fun little memory there.
I wonder what it's like to live in a city where the baseball team there is good. I've never experienced that.
It's funny because I guess it was about 95.
Yeah, right. I was going to say the Mariners were good in the mid 90s, and then again, like in 2001, but they have never gotten very far in the playoffs, or never made it to the World Series, I should say. Are we talking about Predator? What's going on?
We're talking about
here?
Predator. Yeah, we're going to be cut some of that out. But minute 47 of Predator opens with the camera panning upward past a bloody leaf and ends with Blain turning away from a non-threatening animal.
A continuation of the pan upwards here with the blood on the leaves, and we go up, and there's this nice effect of like blood dripping off the vine or the stick, whatever that is. And continues up and up till almost the camera's pointing straight up, and we get this pretty gruesome body hanging from the trees here, and we learn that it is Hawkins.
We're meant to believe that this is Hawkins. There's nowhere you're going to be hearing anybody discovering it or mentioning it later in the movie. It's simply, to their knowledge, Hawkins is killed, gutted, and then taken out of their periphery, out of their viewpoint, and none of them ever see him, and that's, I don't know, it's interesting. It seems kind of rare for a horror movie or like a horror scene to have where the someone is killed but their body is just never found. I can't think of many instances of that in horror movies because, number one, I'm not much of a horror watcher, but number two is just, I think, really rare for the killer not to put the body on full display for everybody else to be scared of.
Yeah, and with a horror movie, like the reason horror fans watch horror movies is for the, interesting and gruesome deaths of the cast members. So if you don't get to see it, then you're missing out. So we do finally get to, we had the lasagna before, but now we finally get to see where that came from. He doesn't look, I know he's supposed to be, we don't get a full shot of like the bottom half of his body, but he doesn't look skinned here to me. Does he to you?
No, and I don't know my headcanon until watching it like this moment or today. My headcanon has always said that he was skinned and then hung upside down from the tree. But if we think back to the Hopper and Green Berets who were skinned.
The gorillas skinned them? Why did they skin them?
Those look skin. Those look like no skin. You could see the organs, the muscle tissue, some parts of the skeletal structure. And here, it just looks like it's a body that's been drained of its blood.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because it's kind of pale. Maybe he's just hanging it there for later. He's going to come back later and finish the job.
Yeah, and I mean, the reason we're not seeing the bottom half is because that's where he was gutted. But at the same, it's an interesting choice for a horror movie to pull back. I mean, it is somewhat gory right here, but like it could have been a lot worse on John McTiernan's part of like showing an open wound and like guts just hanging out.
I'm curious about the special effects here. This is clearly like practical, like this is an actual body, not a real body, obviously, but it's pretty realistic looking, and I don't know if it was. I don't know if you did research on the special effects they did here to create this model of Hawkins hanging from the trees, but it's pretty good. Although it doesn't look a lot like Hawkins. If I kind of like freeze on it and turn my head upside down so I can look at him, it kind of looks like Guile from Street Fighter was.
Oh yeah,
like with the hair sticking up, but I guess it's because he's hanging upside down.
That's a great drop.
Yeah. It doesn't really look like Hawkins, but they only linger on the shot here for about 4 seconds, and then they cut away pretty quickly. So the effect is good. I love that it's practical, that we get a real physical, special effect here. It's pretty gruesome, like he's dripping blood. So overall, I think it works pretty well in its effectiveness.
It's a wonderful lead up to it as well. As you mentioned before, it's a oneer. It's carrying over from 25 seconds from the last minute to the 30 seconds here. So altogether, it's just about a 1 minute oneer, which is pretty incredible for an action sci-fi horror movie to spend that long on a lead up to something. And what is it leading up to? It's showing us the Predator's first kill of Dutch's team. And I like the pausing. It's like there must be some kind of purpose in how the camera is raised here, because it's not going up smoothly. It's like it'll kind of linger a little bit. It'll slowly go up. It'll take its time. Then it'll kind of reach higher and higher and higher.
I do like that. It's not, you're right, the speed kind of changes as the camera's moving along for dramatic effect.
Mm-hmm.
And you're about to see something gruesome with this blood dripping down. And then once you hit the reveal, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. And then what's also great about it too is they do the thing where they do in movies sometimes where they reveal something and then cut away to a different character or a different event happening in the story. And we're going to come back to revisit this probably, but for now we're just going to let you see that, and then we're going to jump to our next character here, which is Blain, of course. So we'll get into that for the second half of the minute, but did you have anything else to add about poor Hawkins here hanging from the trees?
I guess the last thing I would add is that as they pull over the leaf, as the camera is panning up, I really do love that effect that McTiernan employs throughout the movie of carrying on action in the background. Specifically, Dutch from the previous minute turns and walks away from the camera, all in the same one shot as they're raising the camera. As it pans past the leaf upward, you can still see Dutch in the very far background, out of focus now, continuing the search for Hawkins' body. So
shit, you're right. I didn't even notice that until I'm looking back at it again. That is some attention to detail that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, and some of the stuff you're not going to really catch on your first viewing. Likely you'd have to watch it multiple times or minute by minute, God forbid.
Don't worry, everybody. We're doing it for you.
We're doing it for you, for the shared love of Predator. But yeah, then we jump into the second part of the minute where we have Blain pointing Ol Painless around the area he's patrolling, looking for Hawkins' body.
Payback time.
He spits off to the side. He gives us a great view of his bandages and some possible branding we could talk about in a moment. He gives off a couple really, really strong lines here. Come on in, you fuckers. Come on in. As he releases the safety on Ol Painless, and he gives the line, Ol Painless is waiting.
Come on in, you fuckers. Come on in. Ol Painless is waiting.
And that's a great drop. I love putting in throughout the minutes for this movie.
Oh yeah, Ol Painless is waiting.
Ol Painless is waiting.
It's just so classic. It's such an iconic line here. Yeah, I love it.
It's a small animal pops out of the bushes where he had seen some movement where we maybe thought something dangerous or threatening was. He just kind of gives a guffaw and he starts to turn away as the minute ends. So it turns out it's just nothing. It's just like, it's just a big fake out.
And everyone can just go home now, right?
Yeah, everybody just go home. Movie's over.
Yeah, as Blain comes into the frame here, we do get kind of another a gun porn glory shot of this weapon.
Ol Painless is waiting.
Yeah.
As he swings Ol Painless around and the barrel goes right in front of the camera, moves around, and we get another nice shot of all the crazy mechanics of this weapon. And you really do see how heavy that freaking thing must be.
Mm-hmm.
He's lugging it along there. Yeah, and you mentioned we also get a shot of his bandages and some branding. Is that what that is? Branding on his shoulder?
That's what it looks to me, because the skin looks raised.
Yeah.
It looks to be maybe a 5 or a weird-looking S. So I'm wondering what that could be, if that's maybe something from a previous unit that he was in. He mentions Cambodia. Likely they served some time in Vietnam.
That is an effect. That's not like a real brand that Jesse Ventura has, you think?
I don't think it is. It would be interesting if it were, but I don't remember. Yeah, I feel like that's an effect because I feel like we would have seen that before, right? But maybe he has been showing
that's true.
The arms as much before.
It's probably, thinking about it, it's probably just supposed to be, I think it might just supposed to be an injury.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking at images of him.
It's probably not a real brand.
Of his wrestling online where he's shirtless, and yeah, there's no.
You just have that saved in a Google tab. You can just flip over to it.
Yeah, on my work computer, no less. And there's
Let me flip over to my Jesse Ventura wrestling tab.
where with all these shirtless men? Man needs to research other men.
That's another tab on my computer, just shirtless man. Google image search, of course.
Right. It's on Chrome, so it like saves the little search.
Not that there's anything wrong with it.
No, nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, just a save search. Do you want to jump in about... Oh, should we talk about the skunk thing?
Yeah, the skunk thing. So, for the longest time, I thought it was some kind of skunk, and you thought it was some kind of skunk. In the script, it's listed as a tapir, and obviously it's no tapir if you know your tapirs.
I know my tapirs, and that is not
that is not a tapir.
I have been to the zoo. I've seen tapirs. They're much bigger.
It's not a tapir.
Yeah. It's not a tapir.
But on the IMDb, it lists this as a Mexican tree porcupine or a Mexican hairy dwarf porcupine.
It's quite the string of adjectives.
You're one adjective away from like a lawsuit. Right. Which it is not.
So you think they just found one of these indigenous to the area and it became a star?
I think so. It became
put it in the scene.
Star of this minute, other than that brand on Jesse Ventura's shoulder. This is, I did a little bit of copy pasting, of course, from the old Wikipedia. It is the Mexican tree porcupine is found in Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Panama, Mexico, Nicaragua, and Belize. So what's nice about this animal is that no one can argue that, it wouldn't be in the natural Mexican environment when it would be, or to say, this is supposed to be in Central America, it wouldn't be there. Well, yes, it would actually be in Central America as well, right? In that kind of those smaller countries south of Mexico. So yeah, good on the animal department for wrangling a little creature, most likely just kind of setting it loose in front of the camera.
I would not do well in this environment where there are animals crawling around everywhere. I mean, just last minute we saw that big ass snake, and now we get this kind of odd looking skunk. I don't know. And the skunk looks harmless. It's almost kind of cute. Yeah. But anytime you run into an unexpected animal in the woods or in the forest, or in this case, the jungle, it's a little off-putting. As someone who lives in a house in the suburbs, I don't always react to it well. I might scream like a little girl and drop Ol Painless on the ground when I saw that dumb little skunk.
Yeah, same. I'm a little bit frightened at times when I go outside at night and what I think is a squirrel turns out to be like a family of raccoons hanging out in the same place the squirrels hang out. Like, do the squirrels just like transform at night into these giant scary things that hiss at me?
Have you ever seen like an opossum at night?
No, never.
Those
an opossum.
Are creepy. Oh man. So our house is up against a little green belt and we get a lot of little critters that come out at night. Yeah. Sometimes we'll get possums that come out and there are creepy, like ugly ass looking little animals. They got these beady eyes. They're nocturnal. So like their eyes kind of glow at night. It's super weird. And they have this really pale skin. Oh, they're just disgusting. They're gross animals. Every time I see one, I just have this like kind of, I shiver, like this weird aversion to them. They're just
That reminds me of that meme about the possum where it's like a couple of pictures of a possum on a cat found poster. I have it in front of me right here. It's like this picture of a screeching possum, and it says the first dash, it says male, then above that it says FE, like they wrote the FE afterward to say female. It says no collar, not very friendly. I think she might be scared. Not housebroken either. If she's yours, call Dan. Just tells a story. No, possums sound terrifying to see at night. Probably my favorite creature to see at night is the bat, because that tells you that all the bugs are going to go away one way or another. I love seeing the bats at night. Such a cool little thing, and they're so quiet when they fly through the air.
Bats are cool. I was down in Austin, Texas one night, and they have like a thing where if you hang out on this bridge in town and wait for the right part of the night, like this huge like flock, is it a flock of bats, will fly out underneath the bridge right when the sun goes down. And it's like a thing, like people go there to wait for the bats.
It's called a colony of bats,
yeah.
A colony or a camp of bats.
Colony of bats. My favorite one of those is crows. It's a murder of crows.
Yes, I like snakes because they're a plague of snakes.
A plague of snakes.
Yeah.
Nice. I didn't know that. This does bring to mind, though. You mentioned this in your notes. It brings to mind the very tropey thing in suspense, horror, or thriller movies of the cat scare.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you had a couple examples of some cat scares that we see in movies.
Yeah, so for those of you who are not watching the movie currently and are just hearing everything as described by us, a cat scare is a strong buildup of high tension followed by a fright from something harmless, say a startled cat, to release that tension. And in this movie, we're seeing the use of a cat scare in the form of a porcupine. So porcupine scare, and Jesse, as all the people in the group would probably do, just brushes it off. He's not jumping at it. He's not, screeching high pitched at it. He's just gives it like just laughs. Just gives it like a guffaw, like, and just starts to turn away.
I was just say that, and that's the very end of the minute is him kind of smirking at seeing this skunk-like Mexican dwarf animal.
We're gonna see the follow-up combination, which usually happens along with a cat scare, is that jump scare, which TV Tropes calls double subverting a jump scare, meaning you're at first scared by something harmless, then you are kind of breathing a sigh of relief with the character, then all of a sudden, bam, that's when something really scary happens, or really intense, frightening, what have you happens. And we see that in the next minute. But it brought to mind a couple examples that I wrote down, and I think you had a good one too for cat scares. If you want me to go, I'll go first with mine, I guess.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
So the first one, which uses a cat effectively, is the cat scare in Alien. Right before the first appearance of the fully grown xenomorph, where the cat is watching the gory details that we're not seeing. And the second one is from the beginning of Friday the 13th, Part 2, where the woman is going through the kitchen really cautiously, right, expecting the baddie to pop up, and then through the open window flies a cat. Obviously just thrown by an off-screen technician. And
poor cat.
Yeah, poor cat. And it's right before she discovers a decapitated head.
When you mentioned that if you look closely at that scene, you can actually see the technician's hand throwing the cat. Well, I was thinking about this too, because you brought this up, and this may be not a traditional cat scare, but it just made me think of scary cats. And made me think of the movie Pet Sematary, the original from 1989, based on, of course, the Stephen King novel. And there's a cat that works heavily into the plot of that movie, as the cat is the first thing to be buried in the Pet Sematary by our protagonist. And we get a good scare from the cat when it comes back to life as essentially like a demon zombie cat. There's one part where it looks right at the camera, and he sees the cat, and he thinks that it's the normal cat, and but when he reaches towards it, or he looks at it, I can't quite remember exactly, but the cat like looks right at the camera and just goes does this really like demonic, like scary cat scowl. And that's a scary cat right there.
Yeah. Oh,
so that's my cat scare.
It's kind of like a cat scare realized, like a cat scare that you realize that, yes, you should have really been scared of that in the first place.
Well, sometimes That is better.
Right, like the cat is the scary thing. Yeah.
I was just watching the video in slow motion on YouTube where on Friday the 13th part 2 the cat comes through the window, and you can see the person's hand like through the curtain just shoveling the cat into the kitchen.
Oh my god. That's awesome.
That's great.
They didn't have a lot of rules back in 1981. They were just like, find a cat that we can throw through the window, and they were like, oh, there's one over here.
Just this one. Here, kitty. You want to be in a movie? Meow, no. I'll save director John McTiernan's commentary for next minute because it applies fully to next minute. I'm not going to spoil what that's all about, but he's been talking about this one thing for the past 3 or 4 minutes over the commentary track before this big scene happens. So I want to save his words for that, because I imagine when it comes to that scene, he's just gonna again fall silent like he does sometimes in his commentary tracks, where he just stops talking, he's just watching the movie with us, which is, I guess, nice that he's spent that time watching his own movie. But come on, John McTiernan, like give us some meaty details.
All right, well, that kind of rounds us out and brings us to the end of this minute. It's a pretty straightforward minute, broken up into 2 distinct sections. So if we have nothing further, so we jump on to weekly recommends.
Let's jump on to recommends. So what have you to recommend this week, Jeff?
Well, both you and I have been on some family vacations recently, which is why this episode is slightly delayed for anyone out there. But I'll do kind of a quick 2 recommends. Recommend 1 is nothing I really need to recommend, because I think everyone who likes this show is probably already watching it, but I'm right in the middle of watching Stranger Things Season 3, and it's super fun. I've enjoyed all the Stranger Things episodes so far, and we're getting to the point now where the story is somewhat contrived, and some might say it's gone off the rails a little bit, but I just allow myself to be immersed in that world and just enjoy it for what it is. And Stranger Things for me is just 1 hour of pure entertainment. So if you haven't started season 3 yet, I highly recommend it. It's been super fun so far. I haven't finished it, but I like it so far.
Yeah, I love the first 2 seasons. Yeah, we're about the same age, where I think we're like just a few months apart, birthday wise. But I imagine that show kicks in the nostalgia with you, yeah?
Oh, for sure. And like what's been fun about this season, as with other seasons, is there's just little like 80s Easter eggs strewn in through the show. And so far I've noticed at one point one of the characters is wearing a Weird Al Yankovic shirt. At another point they're listening to My Bologna, a great early Weird Al song.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I also always look for posters, because there's always like fun movie posters, and so far I've spotted Evil Dead, the original, and also John Carpenter's The Thing, which is my favorite movie, and so both of those posters have shown up in various spots. So
awesome.
Yeah, Stranger Things Season 3. Quickly, one more. I'm going to recommend a movie I haven't seen yet. But this week I'm planning on heading out to my local cinema to see Crawl, which is a new summertime creature feature directed by Alexander Aja, I think his name is, who has done several other horror movies that I've enjoyed, and it's also produced by Sam Raimi, among a couple other people. Sam Raimi, of course, of Evil Dead fame, one of my favorite horror directors. So this is a movie that's right in my wheelhouse. I'm sure it's going to be fun. All the reviews so far have said it's a super fun, just summer creature feature to go see and get a big bucket of popcorn. So support studio horror, because if more people that go see it, the more great horror movies hopefully will be made. So although I have not seen it yet, I recommend it. Go check it out.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. You'll have to report back next week to tell the audience how it was.
I will. Next week, everybody, you'll get a full Jeff Glover review of Crawl, I promise.
Yeah, if I were to review something I haven't seen yet, it would have to be a little movie coming out in December called Star Wars. Wars, Episode 9. But I'll save that recommend.
Just a little indie, right? Just a little indie.
Right. By a little indie studio, Disney.
So, what do you got for us this week?
This week I'm recommending Toy Story 4, the latest Pixar Disney venture. So I watched it while on vacation on one of the super rainy days that we saw on the Washington/Oregon coast this past week. I took my daughter, my 4-year-old daughter, to it. She loved it. She especially loved the new character Forky.
Yes. Yes.
Made out of a spork and voiced by Tony Hale from Arrested Development and Veep.
Yes, he's great.
He's definitely one of the main takeaways from the movie for me and for most people. I also found the antagonist in the movie really interesting and having their own story. I don't want to spoil anything for the non-Toy Story seers yet. I would say the storyline is familiar to past Toy Story storylines, but at the same time it has enough differences and it has enough twists on the original takes on the Toy Stories to keep it lively, keep it interesting. Lots of jokes, lots of laughs. Key and Peele are in there doing a good buddy back and forth quips and scenarios that they're talking about, and there are quite a few parts that you could be tearing up during, especially if you have any kind of tie to the previous Toy Story movies, which I do, because when former guest of the show Zach Zabriskie was just was just a wee toddler, Toy Story was one of his go-to movies. It was Toy Story 1 we'd watch over and over on VHS, and Space Jam.
Yes.
Those were like his two go-to movies in the mid-90s when he was just a little rugrat toddler just requesting movies. And I really like Toy Story, so it was an easy one to watch over and over again, and then to watch Toy Story 4 and how it unfolds for the different characters. It was really satisfying.
Yeah, it was pretty great. I took my 5-year-old to go see it, and she also loved it. And it's always fun watching those kinds of movies kind of through your kids' eyes. Because, she's 5, and so leading up to go seeing this, we watched all the other Toy Story movies. And, I'd seen part 1 lots of times, but it had been a very long time since I watched part 2, part 3, and they're both good. They do kind of tell the same story over and over again, like someone gets lost, you gotta go save them, and blah, blah, blah. But, the characters are always fun to see again. The voice acting is really great, and and the jokes are fresh and funny, and so I second your recommend.
Awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that it brings up like more adult issues and themes too, where kids aren't necessarily going to clue into those, but at the same time, like the adults watching with them can be thinking about questions like how much help is too much help, or just mere questions of existence, like why am I alive? or what makes a toy and not trash, for instance.
Daddy, why do people die?
Right. At one point, I could swear my 4-year-old was maybe tearing up because I was tearing up towards the end. I was wondering if she was too, but we're wearing the 3D glasses, and I didn't want to bother her to divert her attention. But it's
good restraint.
So the audience has any recommends, feel free to join the discussion at Predator Minute Listeners Palapa on Facebook or on Twitter at Predator Minute, or feel free to email the show predatorminute@gmail.com. Jeff, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on the Twitter. I'm capital K Carl _ capital H Hungus 314. Follow me on Twitter. As always, that's where I am.
All right, just in case something's wrong with the cobble.
I'm here to fix the cobble.
Hello, meine dispatcher says there's something wrong with deine Kabel.
Cool. So for Predator Minute 47, I've been John Zabriskie.
And I am Jeff Glover.
And until next time,
stick around.
Stick around.
Ol Painless is waiting.
Ol Painless is waiting.
Ol Painless.
Ol Painless is waiting.
Oh, what a line.
Hey, everybody, this is Heidi Bennett of Vibrant Visionaries podcast and Spinal Tap Minute podcast. And this is a quick little promo for an upcoming event that my co-host Sean and I wanted to tell you about, and it's Movies by Minutes Portland. Welcome to this promo, Sean. How are you doing over there?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me.
We're going to be meeting up in Portland, Oregon on Saturday, August 24th. For live podcasting, games, and on the stage, we've got the Movies by Minutes guys from Star Wars Minute. Actually, it's going to be a mashup of Star Wars Minute and The Godfather Minute.
Oh, wow. That sounds great.
Yeah, and then we're going to have the newly pod game. Rick from Mad Max Minute is going to be hosting that. Vibrant Visionaries, where I'm going to have the fellas from Open the Podcast Doors, Hal, which I think you could probably figure out which podcast that is. Yeah, and then just added the Cast and the Furious. So lots of live podcasting and some games going on. So I wanted to ask you about the game that you're going to be a part of. Why don't you tell me more about the Cystic Fibrosis Fundraiser Movie Trivia Tournament?
Sure. Yeah. It's a trivia competition between teams of movie podcasters and movie fans answering trivia questions about movies. In Portland on that Saturday will be the final round to name this year's champion. And this is all to raise funds for research into cystic fibrosis. The contestants can get hints from the audience for, I think it'll be $5 or $10 or something like that.
Yeah, so just a little bit more about the event. It is actually the third year we've done this. We started by doing a Movies by Minutes in Chicago. Mm-hmm. Last year we went to
Denver.
This year we're in Portland. Tickets are $20. It's a family-friendly event, and it's really a social event. So we'll have a break for lunch. We'll have beer and wine will be served, and then lots of live podcasting and just opportunities to socialize and hang out with fellow listeners, hang out with other podcasters. If you're a podcaster out there in the Pacific Northwest, we'd love to have you come and, mix, mingle, and swag swap with us. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, it's not just for the Movies by Minutes listener, but the podcast listener and fan alike.
It's not a technical conference. If you've ever been to a conference for work where everyone's talking about kind of the behind the scenes stuff and the nitty gritty, there's certainly some of that. There will be experienced podcasters there. So if you're looking to get your own podcast off the ground and you want to talk to some people and get some input, there's that as well. But it's mainly for listeners. Listeners would get the most out of it. See your favorite podcasts live on stage. And also there are a lot of folks that'll be coming in from around the country and around the world. The formal meeting itself that you need to buy a ticket to is just that Saturday, but will be around that whole weekend. I know a lot of the podcasters into board games. So if you're a big board game person, there's going to be informal gatherings of people playing board games. If you're into pinball and arcade games, I've been scouting out arcades in the Portland area, and there's a few that are not too far from the theater. So I'm sure there's going to be some pinball and video game playing going on that weekend as well. So it really is a whole weekend of fun and events for podcasters, for listeners, for folks that just love to talk about movies.
Sweet.
We should tell the fine folks where they can get tickets.
Go to moviesbyminutes.com/Portland. That's moviesbyminutes.com/Portland to buy tickets. Again, tickets are $20.
Listeners, we look forward to seeing you there.
All right. See you in Portland.